Hello and welcome back to the Live Series podcast brought to you by Amicus. This is the podcast that brings you insight into the life and role of tech leaders from all over the world. Today, I'm joined by Phil Lawrence. Phil is VP of Engineering, and I'm absolutely buzzing to have you on the show. How are you doing, Phil?
Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Amazing. I know when we chatted a little bit before, you've got a wealth of experience when it comes to kind of hiring and pretty much most things that startups especially would kind of come across in terms of challenges and everything like that, right? So maybe for anyone that hasn't heard of yourself or your work, do you want to maybe just give us a quick breakdown of your career up to now?
Thank you. Yeah, I started as a research engineer at Urbana, Illinois, doing AI research into civil engineering domains, and that led me to get a job in Silicon Valley, doing partnering with SAP on some workflow data modeling projects. And that in turn took me back to New England, doing going from startup to big company. Most notably, I was at Groove Networks, which was founded by Ray Ozzie. Fun, really interesting company. Got purchased by Microsoft, and then after that, I was at Resilient, which turned into IBM Resilient. That was a security product and in cyber incident management and response. So recently I've just been from startup to big company, and it has given me really good insight into, okay, what's really cool and exciting about being in a startup, and what's engaging about that. And also, what does it mean to dot your I's and cross your T's and be ready for acquisition, ready to be absorbed by or partnering with big companies. What do you need from a compliance perspective? What are the security concerns and all of that, those kinds of things. So had a really good, fun set of experiences, and really happy with that.
Yeah, I love that. There's obviously a lot of pretty exciting kind of buzzwords in there, obviously IBM and Silicon Valley and things like that. But overall, it kind of accumulates to this extremely kind of big pocket of experience, I suppose. But that's the worst way of phrasing it ever. But it's very impressive. So obviously you touched a little bit on your interest in startups there. You obviously kind of coach a lot of people when it comes to startups, and you consult a lot on that side of things. And like I said before, a lot of the challenges that they'll face. So just tell me what does disconnect in a startup look like to you? We're diving straight in with the heavy hitting question.
Yeah.
What does disconnect look like to you as a sort of an expert in the field in a startup?
So first thing is that in a startup, there is no room for disconnect. If we're not firing on all cylinders, or pulling on the rope in the same direction, there's going to be inefficiencies. There are going to be lost opportunities for you as a startup. So what does that look like? It might be marketing, getting out ahead of the skis of engineering, and if engineering ever says, "Whoa, what is this that is actually being marketed?" That's disconnect. If it's innovation that never makes it into product, that's disconnect. If there's product management saying, "I'm not really getting what I had designed here," that's disconnect. So I like to talk to companies about the funnel of work, and how does that turn into vision, focus, and clarity. You want transparency top to bottom on the whole organization. You want agreement about what is it that we are doing here. What is our focus? What's our vision? And you want your processes and your technologies to help you provide that clarity.
Yeah, for sure. And presumably, that disconnect kind of also hones in on hiring at the same time as you're trying to maybe even if you're not necessarily at the scale up point of your startup, you need to be making those initial hires a super massive priority when it comes to being careful with those hires, right?
Absolutely. Getting hiring wrong is a big drain on the organization.
Yeah.
So to me, getting a good technical fit and a good cultural fit in your hiring, those are kind of givens. But beyond that, you really want to, I think, hire doers. Hire the folks that you think you have the technical horsepower and the intellectual curiosity and the ability to partner with your existing staff and the company. So hire doers. I would also hire diversely as you can. Understand the roles that you need to fill and who needs to fill those roles. And you don't want carbon copies of your higher performers necessarily. You want a diversity of perspectives, and you don't want a diversity of skill sets. So I think hiring diversity is very important. And then lastly, getting your hiring processes right is super important. To me, everybody in the hiring loop should have a technical question, and you should standardize, not standardize, but really understand what are you trying to get out of your technical question. And you should have the cultural fit questions that suss out, are they doers? Are they providing a diverse perspective for us? Are they going to collaborate well with us? And at the end of the interview loop, I really like to get everybody together and talk first and foremost, what did you hear? And what did you ask, and what did you hear? And let's get the data out in a non-judgmental form prior to going again through everybody in the interview loop and say, now, how does that make you feel about the candidate? And before everybody starts, saying yes, a hire, no hire, making that decision, let's get all the facts out on the table as sort of judgmental, with least amount of judgment as possible prior to making the judgment call. So
yeah, I love that. I remember when we spoke briefly before, you kind of brought that up, and I'm really pleased that you've mentioned it whilst we're recording, because I think it's such a refreshing kind of way to look at it. Because I feel like a lot of an interview process, a lot of the time people say, well, you get a gut feeling, and sometimes that can be an advantage to have a gut feeling about somebody. You shouldn't really ignore your gut feelings, I guess, but also just having that kind of objective view initially, and then you can get on to how you actually felt about it, and like you said, give it the thumbs up or the thumbs down or the sideways thumb or whatever you feel like towards it. It's such a progressive and neutral way to look at things, and I think it's a really, really rational way to do it as well. You mentioned a little bit there on culture and technical fit. How can you, just to go into culture a little bit, how do you kind of assess a dynamic within a company, and then how are you able to kind of mold what you're looking for? As obviously, I know you said there with hiring diversity, you don't just want like a one size fits all template for who you're going to hire, right? So how do you kind of assess culturally what you want to bring in, and then once you've kind of got a little bit of a vibe, for lack of a better word, in the company, how do you assess that, and how do you kind of manage that?
Great question. And culture is so important on engagement, and engagement leads to productivity, and we can touch on that a little bit later. But to understand who are you as a company, and understand, well, culture starts at the top too. So to be able to set that tone is very important. But number one, listen to have your one-on-ones with everybody on a regular basis, and make it the person who's being managed, it's their meeting. Let them talk about what they want to talk about, but then touch on, okay, but what does that mean culturally for us? How's it working, right? I'm a big fan on retrospection. I'm not saying necessarily at this point that you retrospect within your one-on-ones, but understanding, where are we, having that idea of constant improvement, and understanding of what does culture mean for us, I think is really important.
Yeah, I know a lot of companies kind of start up and they get this kind of almost like a template for a startup of like, you have to pick 5 words that are going to be your values, then you have to stick to them forever, right? But then can those change over time? Do you agree with that kind of philosophy, just out of curiosity, or is that quite a strong? And it's super common, isn't it, for companies?
Yeah, I've seen where companies have 12 of those keywords, and I've seen how that's not effective because we don't really know them all. And then I've seen them pare it down to two or three, and I think that can be very effective. So I think having a mission is important. Having it be a little bit grandiose is okay, right? To say, what is the value of what we're doing? Because as an employee, most folks want to work on a problem that they are engaged with, right? And if they understand the vision that you have and what in its meaning and its purpose, I believe that is important to foster that sense of what I am doing is important. And that's again, you really want engaged, productive employees. That's your role as a manager, is to get the best out of everybody. So if they love what they're doing and they understand the value of what they're doing and they're rewarded for what they're doing and they're recognized for what they're doing, that's all part and parcel of making that engagement, getting that productivity out of the folks who are in the organization. So yeah, I think it's again, it's a big picture, and that's part of it. Setting that vision and having those keywords for your culture. I think it's all part of getting it right.
Yeah, no, that's a really lovely way of putting it, actually, as well. And you mentioned about productivity. It kind of, I feel like, especially given a lot of people I've spoken to on this podcast, is the kind of you get a really good sense that people who value their team will have a productive team as a result, because your team ultimately, as simple as it sounds, feel valued, and they are therefore going to want to do well for you. Not for you, but for the company. And like you said, the bigger picture, and everyone wants to feel like they're contributing towards something bigger than them, right? And that's the whole point of making people feel valued, and that the result is productivity a lot of the time.
I do agree with you, and it is doing well for the company, but recognize as a leader, the folks that you're leading can have a sense of that they're doing well for you, and I do feel that it's the job of a manager to give credit to the employee, and if you think of yourself as being a servant to your employees, there's going to be a certain amount of loyalty. So as a manager, your job is to make your employee look good. If you equally think as an employee, your job is to make your manager look good. And if you foster that sense of helping each other in that way, I think that goes a long way to increasing the loyalty, again, making the organization work well together, and increase the engagement.
That's a really interesting perspective, actually. I suppose I've never thought about it like that, because I suppose when you go into the world of work, say, generally speaking, and I'm talking super generally right now, you kind of, well, the majority, I suppose, of the mindsets is you need to, in order to progress, you need to look good to your boss. So that you can kind of stand out. But if you're making your boss look good, they're automatically going to gravitate towards you. And it's so simple, but would you say that was a fair comment, and saying like that?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more about that. I feel that for myself, I perform better when I think of how I make others look good. And that reflects well on you as a person, and it just naturally kind of come out in your performance review that somebody's going to want to say they did an awesome job. Not necessarily because they made me look good, but that's part of it. That's just sort of ingrained on how I think about it.
Yeah, 100%. What an interesting. I do have, I must say, for these podcasts, a little list of questions that I usually kind of try and work through, just for anyone listening. But I found myself trailing off with Phil because it's such an interesting kind of insight, and obviously got a lot to say about certain things. So I'll bring us back to kind of the original track that we were supposed to be going down. It's just so interesting to get your insight on this kind of thing, because you've got really cool perspectives. It's very, very insightful. One thing that we were going to talk about is task versus relationship conflict at work. What is it, for anyone who's not heard of this concept before, and how, which is a big question, how do you address it?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I love it. Task conflict is the conflict about what we're working on, the decisions that we're making, the technical part of what we're working And relationship conflict is the interpersonal, largely ego-driven conflict that we engage in, naturally as people. But I believe one of the hallmarks of high-performing teams is that they're really good at task conflict. They have lots, and they engage in task conflict very well and very productively. And they somehow manage to stay away from relationship conflict. So this is something that I like to coach. I like to talk about with my organization, and really foster a safe place to have task conflict, that everybody is allowed to speak up freely about. We're engaging in this. We're thinking about this technology, and it means this to me. I just started 3 days ago, but this is what I know about this technology, and my voice is an equal part of that task conflict, which is inherently egoless. It's inherently thought about in its correct, whether it's correct or not, whether not how it makes an individual feel necessarily, whether it's part of it was their idea and therefore should be more valued, right? So that's the difference between task and relationship conflict. To just reemphasize this, it's a hallmark of excellent teams that they do task conflict very well and they avoid relationship conflict.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting concept, isn't it? And because we've all experienced certain elements of either or both at work, but never actually thought to label it and address it and figure out a real way to accomplish something past it. I've been lucky enough to never actually have kind of real relationship conflict in work, but it's an interesting thing to think that task conflict is actually a really healthy thing to have. And especially, like you said, if you can separate that from any other kind of conflict at work, then you're essentially onto a winner, because that makes you a confident person who values your own opinion, and that probably makes you a more productive contributor to the team, presumably, hypothetically speaking, I would say.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's exactly, you want to foster safe places to fail in your workplace. That gives the avenues for innovation. Another hallmark of excellent teams is that everybody talks, right? And it will be more likely the case that everybody talks when the dialogue is about task conflict, not and we avoid the relationship conflict side of things.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, having that kind of camaraderie at work, I suppose, is always great. And it is, I suppose it is actually camaraderie as well, when it's, even though it might seem on surface level conflict, you're ultimately trying to achieve something together. And so that kind of makes it camaraderie, right? And you're essentially just debating and discussing, if a little bit, argumentatively, for lack of a better word, but you're ultimately trying to reach a goal together, whereas relationship conflict doesn't achieve anything. You're not getting anywhere with it, and it kind of just causes rifts, right? But to move on to a kind of more upbeat theme, let's talk about kind of performance at work, and as a startup, especially, again, as either as a leader or as a team leader. How can you kind of measure your own performance if it's a small team in a startup, or if you've kind of got yourself a bigger team in a startup, regard of size? How can you kind of measure your own performance as a leader, and what kind of impact can it have on your team if you're not measuring yourself, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. You need to know how you're doing. You need to know where your strengths and weaknesses are, and you need to address your weaknesses and build on your strengths. So what you measure is very, very important. At my last company, we implemented a technology called Jellyfish, which measures a lot. It measures very, very, very deeply all of the different aspects of engineering performance, and you can see how you stack up relative to companies your size, and determine whether those are things that you want to concentrate on to get better, right? So what are those things? There's also, embedded within, all the measures that Jellyfish had, and there are other technologies that are very good, out there. I'm not necessarily a proponent of jellyfish. I'm just saying this is one of the technologies that can be used. But within all of the technology that you have in place, there are ways to get metrics out of them, and it's very interesting to look at those. So another one of the measures that I'm really a strong proponent of is the DORA metrics. So this is lead time to deploy, the number of defects, the amount of time that it takes you to recover from those defects, and things like that. I think these are really really good measures that allow you to see, how productive are we being, how much work in progress do we have, because one of the big killers of productivity is context switching, and context switching comes from having too much work in progress, and having too much work in progress comes from agreeing to too many things, not having that focus, not having the clarity of what it is that we're building. So tying back into a previous conversation, it all bubbles down from a lack of focus to a lack of productivity, right? So these are the things that you really want to measure, and measure yourself against in how well am I doing as a leader to sometimes say no, right? Because there are too many things that we're working on. We're going to get too fragmented. Our productivity is going to go down as a consequence of this. So all of those, there's so much more to this than just those key points. But I would say, distilling it down, deciding what really is important for you as an organization to get your organization working well, measuring that, and having a constant improvement towards the things that you're most you value most. I will say there are pitfalls, because if you measure things that sometimes your workflows and your priorities get strongly tied to the measures that you're articulating. So you had better make sure that those are the right ones, right? Because if you get that wrong, you can actually build inefficiency into your processes by measuring things that people force them down a path that kind of may not be productive towards your ultimately having a productive environment.
Yeah, it's not a simple thing, is it, to go from A to B, to go from focus to productive? There's so many different factors and variables, and that's might be an obvious thing to say, but when you actually open it up and see, it's kind of there's even more layers to what you might initially think. I guess a lot of people who may be listening, who are maybe just started a startup, or maybe to looking to build a tech team within their startup, maybe have a lot more to think about than what they might have initially thought after listening to this episode, at least. But I'm hoping anyway that there must have been a lot of key takeaways from what you've said, because it's definitely been insightful for me, and I don't actually own a startup. So I've actually really enjoyed what you've had to say, to be honest. And I usually ask this question as a kind of last one on an episode, but I do feel like this entire episode's kind of answered this question alone, because the question is, what advice would you have for someone kind of looking to build an engineering team within a startup? But obviously this whole kind of conversation's been around what you should be doing and what you should be looking out for. But if you had a summary of kind of, obviously it's quite a toughie, because you have this wealth of experience and insight and knowledge to kind of summarize just for me, but what do you have any key points and key takeaways for advice that you would have for someone in that position?
Thanks. Yeah, so I think there's an internal answer to that question and sort of an external. If you're building an engineering organization, internally it's all about quality, predictability, and productivity. So quality is a given. We have to measure defects, we have to understand defects, we have to provide quality services and features to our customers. The predictability, this may not necessarily be a given or maybe thought through, but it is super important for the organization to be able to articulate the roadmap, and be able to say, this is what we're building, this is how long it's gonna take, right? So the predictability part of it is super key. And then we talked a lot about productivity. There's so much that goes into productivity. It's about engagement. It's about keeping, removing context switching, all the things that we talked about. Just getting back to the predictability side of things, making sure that you get all the way down through what I call the funnel of work to the point where we're tasking things out and articulating your proposed schedule based on your real understanding of how that work fits into the product, the really what it is that we're building, and it's the team that's building it that should really understand that well, and you're not predictable at any real granularity until the team has had a chance to get that all the way through to them, sort of refined and also and tasked out, in my opinion. So that's the internal side of things. The external side of things is that you are building quality features and services for your customers, and you are building revenue for the company. So as a leader, you have to understand how are you working within the context of an entire organization to get it right, to make sure that you're helping get everybody pulling on the rope in the same direction, right? And ultimately, you should be able to very clearly articulate, what does that mean? How am I helping the company build revenue? Because that's what a lot of the rest of the company really cares about. And that's what the board cares about. That's what the CEO cares about. So, in your measurements, being able to understand, how are we productive? How are we building features? What's the value of those features to our customers? And, having that partnership with product management so you fully understand that. So again, I would say, think about both internally, what are we doing to build our processes to get quality, predictability, productivity, and externally, how am I communicating and how am I really supporting the business around providing that value to customers, providing some real innovation and helpful, helping your customers achieve their goals, their business goals, right? And then how does that help provide revenue for the company? Because that's the ultimate goal that's why you're in business, right? So I think that's a lot, but that's all of what you do as an engineering leader.
Brilliantly summed up, I think, as well. I know that was a massive question, but really eloquently put, and like I said, so much to kind of fit into half an hour. It's a shame that I wish I'd prepared more questions almost, so we could have just kept talking and talking. But I'll definitely get you on for a part 2, I think, because it's honestly, you've got so much to share, and it's really obvious from kind of how eloquent you are talking about it that your experience is extraordinary and very, very insightful. So I'm really grateful to have you on the show, and we'll definitely get you back on again and see how you're getting on in a few months, and see what other wonderful insights you can share on the podcast as well.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on, and I really look forward to the next time.
Yeah, 100%. You can. So yeah, we're going to be having this up on YouTube and up on Spotify as well, as per usual. We've got quite a lot of episodes going on over there as well. I think we've only got a handful that are specifically about startups, so I'll put the rest about startups down there in the comments and everything as well. If you are watching on YouTube, you can hover over in the logo in the corner and hit subscribe, and head over to amicusjobs.com for a bunch of other lovely content as well. Philip, thank you again so much.
Thank you very much.